Aldred. Amelia is a passionate library advocate and serves as the Deputy Director of State and Local Advocacy at the American Library Association. In her role at ALA, Amelia assists state and local library advocates in building library-friendly public policy and combating adverse policy. She also staffs the Unite Against Book Bans initiative and the ALA Committee on Library Advocacy. Prior to joining ALA, Amelia worked in advocacy communications and international fundraising. Her advocacy work has involved healthcare equity, environmental justice, gun violence prevention, food access, veteran suicide prevention, and arts education. What a wide range of topics. When she's not advocating for libraries, you can find Amelia volunteering at her local writing center, listening to audiobooks, yay audiobooks, and practicing circus arts, though not at the same time. Take it away, Amelia.
Hello, everyone. I am delighted to be here, and I am so delighted to introduce our author panelists. Ashley Hope Pérez is the editor of Band Together, Our Fight for Freedom's Rights, for Readers' Rights, and the author of 3 novels. She currently directs the Unite to Read project, a Mellon Foundation-funded initiative to support positive engagement with banned books and expand youth access to diverse literature. Her 2015 novel, Out of Darkness, has become one of the most frequently banned novels in the United States, despite its noted literary merit. It received a 2016 Printz Honor for Literary Excellence in Young Adult Fiction, the 2016 Tomas Rivera Book Award, and the 2016 Americas Award. Ashley is also a former high school English teacher, holds a doctorate in comparative literature, and is an associate professor at the Ohio State University. Welcome, Ashley. Jarrett Dapier is a Chicago area youth services librarian and the recipient of the John Philip Imrath Award from the American Library Association for his work exposing book censorship in the Chicago public schools. He is the author of several award-winning picture books for children, one of which has faced several censorship attempts. He is the author of the graphic novel Wake Now in the Fire, which is illustrated by A.J. Dungo and will be published by 10 Speed Graphic in 2026 and is available for pre-order now. Kelly Yang is the author of Front Desk, which won the 2019 Asian Pacific American Award for Literature and was chosen a Best Book of the Year by multiple publications, including NPR, The Washington Post, and the New York Public Library. Kelly's family immigrated to the United States from China when she was a young girl, and she grew up in California in circumstances very similar to those of Mia Tang. She eventually left the motels and went to college at the age of 13 and is a graduate of UC Berkeley and the Harvard Law School. She is the founder of the Kelly Yang Project, a leading writing and debating program for children in Asia and the United States. Her writing has been published in the South China Morning Post, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Atlantic. Thank you all so much for being here. I am so excited for this conversation. So to start off, we're going to be starting off with some questions. We'll also be taking some audience questions towards the end. So all of you have had books challenged and even removed, and many people are unaware of how censorship affects authors. I'd like to hear your experience about censorship and its effect on you. Kelly, could we start with you?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. I would say for me, first of all, just the act of writing itself is such a lonely and brave act. You know, it takes so much courage and so much willpower to keep going and to convince yourself that you're going to get to the end of the book, first of all, that you will make it through alive, and that there will be people wanting to read it in the end, and that your bravery in sharing your experience, maybe your lived experience, it is going to be worth it. It's going to resonate with someone, and it's going to make someone else feel a little bit better, a little bit less alone, because that to me is like the whole point of why we create art. And I feel like the censorship thing just sucks away at that lifeblood, and makes it very hard, very difficult when you're sitting there in the weeds of a story to find that courage to keep going, because in the back of your mind, you're already battling so many doubts, so many voices saying, oh, this story's not good enough, or this or that, or you can't figure out this plot point. And then to add on that other voice now saying, well, but even if it is good, are people even going to be allowed to read it? Is it even going to have a space on the shelf? I think that is completely unconscionable and unfair and really just devastating to freedom.
Thank you so much. Ashley, anything in terms of your experience of how the effect of censorship on authors?
Yeah, I often find myself focusing on students because I'm a former teacher, but I will say I would echo everything Kelly said. I'm actually in band together, which I love, and highly recommend. My literary contribution is really an attempt to capture the way that the messages about your work, particularly the hateful ones that can come streaming in if, I don't know, somebody posts an internet video of an anal sex rant and it goes internationally viral. You get a lot of gross things when that person is associating their drama and performance of anger with your book. So I think that I try to weave that experience in and also sort of capture the ongoing work of reclaiming the full space of creativity from that intrusion. And I think it really is an intrusion. It creates a sense of enclosure and a difficulty. I think, Kelly, what you were describing, the way that, there are so many off ramps for writers, so many ways to not be writing. And I think that censorship just kind of creates added pressure that can cause you to end up not sitting down to do the work. I actually have I was looking to see if I could find it, but I have I have little reminders that I have all over the house that say things like, my next novel is my best answer to book banners. So there's something about trying to be unstoppable that's really important, but that intrusion and also just what the slime of hate mail and nasty messages, feels like, it's intrusive.
Thank you so much. And when both of you talking about that intrusion, that eroding of freedom, and that way that that affects not only um, th- your professional life, but also your internal process as well. Jarrett, is there anything that you have to add to that as far as that intrusion or other pieces of the effect of censorship on authors and their creative process?
I wholeheartedly agree with both Kelly and Ashley, and I just want to say how thrilled I am to be here with both of them. I've read all of Kelly's books aloud to my son, who's 14, so he's still on the Kelly Yang train. And Ashley's Out of Darkness is one of my favorite YA books ever, so I'm really thrilled to be here. But echoing to really stick with the idea of intrusion. It's like if you were at your writing desk and someone throws a live snake in your lap, you're not going to be like, oh, all right, I'll just deal with this and move it to the side. It's a sudden, at least for me personally, it's a sudden jumping back, and it's absolutely an intrusion, and it has an emotional element. It has as Kelly referenced, it's so difficult to just sit down and write. It's a great distraction. And so there's one element of me that's going, oh, awesome, let's bite this. I don't have to write. And then that comes back to bite me in the ass, because then I feel very stressed out that I haven't been writing. I've been trying to keep tabs on what's happening in this tiny town in Alabama, or I've written a letter because they've asked me to submit to the board. It all takes time, and time is extremely precious. I work full time as a librarian and raising children with various physical needs and disabilities, and then trying to write on top of it. I would say, yeah, the emotional, and then the other element is that it does have the emotional effect of pissing me off deeply. And that is a real spur to writing for me, if I can find the time to do it. So I was able to thankfully fuel and channel all of that anger and rage, especially as the nation and the country has lost its mind with regards to this topic over the last 5 years while I worked on my graphic novel, which is about kids fighting censorship. And to echo Ashley, it comes back to the kids. My source of anger, it comes back to the readers and the teens themselves, that my sense of almost advocacy, but I guess protection or defensiveness on their behalf, because it becomes very personal very fast. And so, yeah, I mean, another form of censorship that I'm sure Kelly and Ashley have also experienced is being disinvited from places where you not only were expecting and made plans and rearranged your family and professional life to attend, but also you're depending on that income. And this happened to me a couple of years ago, the 3 days after my wife had a spiral fracture in her ankle and required surgery and 6 weeks of recuperation. This was happening in the middle of that. And so it's an incredible, incredible stress.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. As Kelly said, writing can be such a solitary activity, and readers often see the end product, but they don't see the process. And thank you for shedding light on how this affects authors that I think too often is invisible to people. So deeply appreciate that. I'm going to pick up on something that Jarrett said, which was on young readers and thinking about the effect on your readers. Um, could we talk a little bit more about that impact? Jarrett, I'm going to start with you since you had made that comment on what do you find to be the impact on young readers?
So I think that it's twofold. For the readers for whom a certain book, like Ashley's book, readers who might identify with the lives of the characters in that book, I think that it's an incredible slap in the face, and I think that it's very wounding. We always hope that maybe kids didn't hear about this one book, about a trans teenager being removed by the school board, but it always blows up, and I think it can be very isolating, and I know that it can be galvanizing for a lot of teens too. Lots of board meetings that I watch, I'm most in awe of the brilliant teens who speak up every single time, and they always just hit the nail on the head and speak without any kind of triangulation whatsoever. And so those teens that are galvanized, I think it's incredible. It can boost reading communities of teens who share books that have been censored and even band together to read them. But I think but teens, I think, who feel isolated already, maybe within their identity, maybe at home, maybe they're experiencing poverty, domestic violence at home, they are losing that escape, as well as that feeling of comfort that a book, an author can provide, I think, by showing a story that really speaks to them and also says you exist and you matter. Lastly, I would just say to that, I think that it also communicates. I have a podcast that I now run about censorship, and I just spoke with author Randy Pink, and she wrote Angel of Greenwood. And to me, the white children in this town of Pennsylvania who were, witnessed their board removing Angel of Greenwood from the 9th grade curriculum, I think we're effectively told, you don't need to care about this. There are kids who will say, I do need to care about this, and I'm pissed off, and those kids spoke up. But I think a really tragic message to white readers, young white readers who are impressionable, is we erased this community. It's been erased from history, and we're still going to erase it. You don't need to worry about it. And that's just absolutely not true. So it's tragic.
Thank you. I think it's such a good point of the message that's being sent to young people along with the isolation. Ashley, I see you added something in the chat to everyone. Could you expand on that a bit more of supporting young people and seeing that impact on them, and then what are ways that we can support young people?
For sure. I mean, I think that when students are the ones to speak up and say what books mean to them, why they're important to their peers, it's a lot harder for school leaders to keep up the performance that, oh, we're here to protect the young people. And what you will hear teens say is that we have to cope with these realities in our lives, or our friends are dealing with it, or these are our histories. So don't say you're protecting us when you're taking away the stories that reflect what's difficult, the stories that give us spaces to understand and navigate the difficulty that, frankly, you grown-ups, yeah, have created. You know what I mean? There's a kind of element of what an outrage for adults to pretend that books that address harm or address painful issues are themselves harmful. And I always give the analogy. It's like if, every sensible adult knows what to do. If a child comes to them and says, my friend is being hurt at home. This is what she told me, and she needs help. Every sensible adult knows to say, thank you so much for raising that issue. Thank you so much for speaking up, right? Our books are that. They're speaking up about the issues. But we know no sensible adult should say to that child, how dare you talk about child abuse? Don't you know child abuse is terrible? You shouldn't be saying anything about it, right? We wouldn't do that. And so I'm always stunned at this idea that representing something that's harmful in the world um, is being conflated with harm.
Thank you. I think that it's such an important point of expanding that conversation about what is harmful. How do we protect children? And getting away from some of the narratives about the way that removing books, limiting access to information is the way to protect young people. Kelly is someone who works with projects working with young people, also has many young readers and teen characters. Anything to add as far as ways to both support young people who are fighting this fight and the impact that censorship has on them?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of lived through it because not because of censorship, but because we didn't have books growing when I was growing up, where I saw a kid who lived in a motel, right? And that was my life. So I know firsthand the impact of not seeing yourself on the page, never seeing poverty really portrayed the way that I was living it. These are realities a lot of people are going through, right? Life is really hard right now, which is one of the reasons why people don't want to talk about it. It makes them uncomfortable to talk about the fact that it's really hard now to get groceries, to provide for our kids. Like, we don't all have health care. It's really, really uncomfortable. But we have to talk about these issues, because when I was growing up and I never really saw it, I started internalizing it as there's something wrong with my family. There's something we did wrong. There's something I did wrong. I'm not growing up with, trips to the mall like my friends, and I don't get to go all these places during the summer. And then I had a really lonely childhood as a result. Instead of opening up, I closed myself off. I didn't want to talk to any friends. I didn't invite anyone over. And I just obviously have felt in my own life just the sheer weight of that on top of everything else and I can only imagine, being a young person now, navigating so many things, so many questions. It's just like Jarrett was saying, nothing really makes sense these days. And having all these questions and having these stories that are also unpacking the same questions you have and saying, no, we're not, I'm sorry, that's not a resource for you. And then wondering why we have such high levels of depression, high levels of loneliness, kids turning to TikTok and doom scrolling. I mean, look at the alternative where people are trying to protect kids, but the alternative is just, it's devastating. I'd rather have those conversations and use books as a resource and talk about the things that make us all uncomfortable, because we really don't, number one, it's only making us uncomfortable because we don't understand it. So, which is why we should read. We need to have more empathy and step into someone else's shoes.
On that topic of conversations and stepping into people's shoes, I want to say all three of you, you've done such an incredible job of using your platform to inspire conversations about important topics, the ones that you've written about in your works, but also about book banning itself. And I'd like to talk more about that. I know you all have different projects and different ways you're approaching this. I'm going to start. Ashley, you have a book that you held up, band together, and I'd love to hear a little bit more for our audience to hear a little bit more about what that's about, what inspired you to write it, what you want readers to take away from this.
Totally. So, I mean, the title of Out of Darkness, I always feel like I have to tell people, and I'm going to come back to Band Together, but the meaning of it is not, oh, you get to come out of darkness into the light, but it's like making something beautiful out of darkness. And that's just really how I approach everything in my life. It's how I make sense of my own difficult experiences, and I think that Band Together and the Unite to Read project and some of the things that I've chosen to do in relation to book banning and respond, and advocacy for readers is really part of that. What can I do here? This is not what I want. I wouldn't choose it, but what can I do? And I think what I kept coming back to, that my nightmare literally from 2021 on was the imagining teachers walking their classes into school libraries that were stripped of the books that authors like us worked so hard to create over the past decades, so that every kid walking in there could find something that offered them a bridge to a love of learning. And every book we remove is a bridge destroyed. And so I would think about that. And I mean, I have seen the pictures of libraries in Texas, libraries in Florida, libraries in Iowa, and the carts and carts of books that have been removed. And so that haunted me. And I think that my collaborators and I really focused on is, how do we rebuild the bridges? We can't force those districts to do what's right for students and put those books back. But we can give brave librarians a book that helps young people know what's missing, where to find it, why it matters, and what they can do to fight for their rights and to fight for other young people's rights. So, the writers brought it. I mean, this is a powerful anthology. It has stories, it has poetry, it has personal essays, it has incredible graphic, visual essays by Maya Kobabe and others, and fantastic illustration by Debbie Fong. I just love it. I love it so much. And I crammed in as many book lists as I could and books in every spot they would let me, because I want this to be a tool for young people to discover what might not be in their library.
Thank you. And it is an outstanding anthology. And it's such an important, as you said, tool for people to use, to understand, and to know what things that they can do. In terms of also recent tools that people have published, Jarrett, I'd love to hear more about Wake Now in the Fire, which is also addressing this topic and has been mentioned. So if you could share some more with the audience who isn't aware of it yet, love to hear more about that.
Sure, thank you. And if I am going on too long, just like hold up like letter L or something, like, hey, loser, stop. Because I have a tendency. It's a very exciting day for me because this morning, well, it's a very emotional day because I'm doing this, but also I had a potential leak in the wall at home, and our cat has got an issue with her belly, and my son was having a panic attack about the Texas National Guard being in Illinois and Chicago. We live in South Evanston, so they're right down the street, or at least ICE agents are, and so it was awful morning. And then I received this in the mail, which is the actual advance bound copy of Wake Now in the Fire. Wake Now in the Fire, I got a hardcover and a paperback copy. I am blown away by the quality of the printing and the design. And like, of course, I've seen all those digitally, but it's just beyond anything I'd hoped for. And to give the audience backstory, it's the story, it's based on a true story. The true story being that in 2013, Chicago Public Schools administrators issued a directive to remove the book Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi, also a graphic novel, from every single school in the Chicago Public School system. So that's 600 plus different schools. And the staff were directed, who were like heads of these schools, to go out to these networks of schools that they oversaw and collect the books. And if a school had it in their library or any classroom copies, you were to collect all of them and then deliver them to the Department of Literacy, because the book is done. It's not allowed. And most of the people who received this directive didn't sort of hop to it, but one guy, Johnny on the spot, happened to stop at Lane Tech High School, which is on the north side near Wrigley Field. It's a magnet high school, so it's got thousands of kids. They all had to test to get in there, and a lot of them are either politically connected or they have, you know, connections to the media or arts and culture within Chicago. For example, Eric Zorn, the columnist for the Chicago Tribune, his daughter at that time was a student there. But there were a group of students who immediately acted upon these books being taken from their teacher's collection. She told them later in the day that she had had to deliver these 25 copies and that they weren't allowed anymore. And it pissed them off so badly. Two of them in particular, and then the group just sort of kept expanding. But they were very savvy about getting the word out, organizing a protest for a very visible corner, Western and Addison in Chicago, for that Friday. This happened on a Tuesday, and just getting the word out to the media and within the school itself, so that by the end of the week, there were 80 to 100 kids out on that corner. There were local artists like Beth Hetland from School of Art Institute, Barbara Jones from Office for Intellectual Freedom was there. I mean, it really attracted an incredible amount of energy and also attention. And it shamed Barbara Bird Bennett, the CEO of the schools, who said she had nothing to do with it, into basically retracting most of the ban. They tried to save face by keeping the ban in place for 7th and 8th graders. And I think teachers whose kids weren't in AP needed special training to teach it. It was a lot of bullshit, but ultimately the kids really, they protected and defended their freedom to read, as well as the freedom for other kids throughout Chicago to read. So it went away. CPS did what they could to make it, you know, disappear. But I'd always wondered what the hell happened with that, and how did this happen? How did it get to this level? And I was writing an essay or a research project for grad school, and I interviewed students that were involved, teachers that were there that week, administrators, Chicago public librarians. It was a whole wide array of people. And I also uncovered documents that showed emails that they claimed didn't exist, showing exactly who was part of this ban, who made the decisions, and actually just like the whole string of emails that showed the decision-making process and how thoughtless and incurious and sort of like authoritarian it was. And then I decided to write a graphic novel about it. And so this is, the characters are composites of teens I've known over the years. Some of them are based on teens who were there and did resist the censorship effort against Persepolis. But their dialogue and home situations and personal lives are fictionalized. But how the ban happened throughout the week and the week following is exactly how it went down in real life. So it comes out February 3rd, and you can pre-order it now. I really hope you will. I'm super proud of it. AJ Dungo is the illustrator, and I'm just in love with this book now that I have it in my hands. It's been 10 years in the making, so yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for letting everyone know that it is available pre-order. Such an important story, and I think really highlights how important it is to shed light on censorship, that so often it can happen in secret behind closed doors, and people don't even know that their access to information is being curtailed. And it's you said that, and the chilling effect is real as far as both curtailing that speech and then also people being afraid to even report it if they know about it. Oh,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
it was an instructive example at the time of like what a school board can do. They can take classroom copies. They can make that decision on behalf of themselves. But it was crazy at that time, and now it's been just it's in the shadow of everything that's happened since.
So we have Ashley's anthology, Jarrett's graphic novel, but Kelly, you are also using platforms but in a different way to talk about this topic. And I'm talking about your social media videos, which are incredibly popular. They're so funny, they're relevant, they don't shy away from this complicated issue. And they do a really great job of meeting people where they are. And going back to some of our earlier talk about opening this conversation and being willing to have this conversation, that your videos really do that. Can you talk us a little bit more about your videos, your process, why you chose this multimedia approach, and just let us into a bit of this?
I don't know what I'm doing. First of all, so I don't even, I remember like the Twitter days where we would just, the old Twitter days, and we go on, and most writers were on Twitter, and that was really fun. But then Twitter got really weird, and I was just trying to find another way to express what I was going through and feeling. But it's hard for me to, like, I always want to choose joy, because even in talking about difficult things, I think it's draining to be just super negative all the time. And don't get me wrong, I'm pissed as hell. I am like so pissed off. But I wanted to just talk about things in a way that I could, have fun and make fun and make it kind of interesting. So like I did one recently, or actually I did one a few years ago, and I just reposted it, but it was talking about book banning in terms of cheese, because I don't really like cheese, but I don't ask the grocery store to remove the cheese, and I found that, I think this goes back to when I was a teacher. I was a writing teacher for 15 years. And we talked about everything in my classroom, right? I was like obsessed with looking at the news and talking about real life situations and in real time, what we were going through. I never got any pushback from anyone's parents or anything like that, because the kids were so engaged, and they were improving. they were so fired up. And I remember even hard topics. I mean, because I was teaching in Hong Kong, and I mean, talk about a place where we went from having freedom of speech to seeing a lot of restrictions. It can dive pretty quickly, and I've seen that. So that was always in the back of my mind, as we're going through this now. But even there, just being able to make things interesting for kids, find the humor in it, because that's what resonates with them. That's what makes them kind of fascinated. And then it sparks a deeper conversation. We can have the deeper conversation, but to kind of hook them and get them interested, I think is really, really important. And they are an essential partner. First of all, it's all dealing with them, right? Whether or not they can read, they should have every say in that. We shouldn't be excluding them from the conversation. Everyone needs to include all of the people who have the stakeholders. They're probably the biggest stakeholder. So any way, shape, or form we can, whether it's through books or through videos or through speeches, talks, I bring it up, when I go into schools. I just think that having a conversation, and that's when they really trust you, right? Because they can come and talk to you about really anything. And I think that makes them feel so relieved that you see them and you hear them and you know what they're going through.
So putting all of these things together, all the different ways that you're all raising awareness of this issue and opening these conversations, giving people tools. Well, so much what we talk about, and when I do advocacy trainings, I always remind people that advocacy is about moving from awareness to action. So for people that are listening in that are inspired by this conversation and they want to take action, what are some ways that they can take action to support authors that are being censored and to support readers? I will go ahead. Ashley, take it
Okay.
away.
I'm happy to talk about that. I mean, I think that I love that explanation of what of advocacy. And it's I think we're in a moment where every way that any of us can find to step forward protectively, to step forward and um say the thing, like, um, is really powerful. And and that thing, depends on if you're in the grocery line or if you're in a boardroom or if you're in a classroom. It really varies. But I think that one of the first steps is internal, to be able to recognize the opportunity. And so I even think it actually has to do with like a being in your like being in the present. I know a lot of people, as censorship has become more of an issue in higher education. I know colleagues who kind of go soft focus in spaces where this sort of double speak is happening, or if there's a conversation happening and they have a strong conviction but they are really sensitive to the power dynamics, they kind of go, like, it's a mild dissociation. And I think one of the first things we need to do is stay present. Stay conscious of the dynamics. Trust our felt sense when something seems wrong or something seems, like, I- someone needs to say something here, or someone needs to act, or someone needs to document. Someone needs to create a record of what's going on. That's someone's you. You're there. That's your opportunity. And so, beginning by just cultivating a broad sense of, we all have opportunities and all of those opportunities matter. And every time we step forward like that, we show ourselves that we can do that and be okay. And I think, everyone has their different levels of risk, or, what they're able to manage. But I think that to have the sense that it's not, am I going to act, but where and how am I going to act, is really important. And the one other thing, and these are like, I know these are like very broad, but I could say I'll pop the Unite to Read project stuff in the chat. But I will say the other thing I think people really need to keep in mind with advocacy, is you need to find ways to align that advocacy with your strengths, your interests, passions, and values. So like, I'm not a protester. It's not my scene. I get panicky. I don't do that, but I have my areas of strength, the kinds of the I can craft a letter to push back on censorship. There are things that I can do that are a way better payoff for my effort. So people need to look at that, because we cannot do this work just out of a sense of obligation. We have to be finding joy in it. We have to be finding community. So making sure that that is a part of how you approach things. So people who love being around teenagers, like starting a book club with teenagers, is a great thing you could do. It's just really thinking about what are your gifts and resources. And then just really practically, I will put the interest form for the Unite to Read project. We're doing a lot of different things and you can read about it, but we have some really concrete opportunities, like teaching people how to make the book resumes that OIF makes available to teachers and librarians and everyone, so that it's easy to highlight that literary merit of the works that are being targeted. And if you don't know what the Miller test is, none of the books in libraries are obscene, because they all have significant literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. We couldn't shut that point down if we're actually getting people to talk about real definitions, but teachers and librarians need those resources. So I'll share that stuff, but those are just a few of my thoughts about advocacy.
Thank you for sharing those thoughts. And for folks that are joining us for this panel but might not have seen the workshops, OIF is the Office for Intellectual Freedom, which is part of the American Library Association. And the Book Resumes Project, as I said, it could be a fantastic way to learn more about the books that are frequently challenged, and get information, always cite our sources, and we don't tell people whether they should or shouldn't read the book. We trust people to make their own decisions. But these are resources that can help you defend the access to this book or to these materials when they're being challenged in your community. So definitely invite folks to check it out. Thank you, Ashley, so much for that. And I really appreciate you talking about how there really is a place for everyone, everyone's skills, everyone's unique talents. I always love the quote by the writer and educator Parker Palmer that vocation is where your heart's passion meets the world's great need. And I think that can be a really great way of envisioning advocacy, as you say. On that, turning over to Kelly, as people often think about, I'm not a lawyer or I'm not this or that. What can I do? And your videos make things so accessible and are meeting so many people in different places and where they are. Do you have anything to add to that about what are some ways that people can help support authors and help support readers, in this fight against censorship?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what Ashley was saying about community. We're all part of the community, so we have a huge voice, each and every one of us. We don't have to be a lawyer. We don't have to be any kind of professional, any kind of protester professional, someone who's an activist. We just simply have to care. And all we have to do is make it known that we care. I think that our librarians are going through so much. It is just heartbreaking to see so many of them, especially on the front lines in these states that are having these horrific laws passed. And I think that just going up to them and saying, like, how can I help you? How can I want books for my children, right? That's just like a basic thing. I think that we can really show that the overwhelming majority of people want access to books. It's just a fact. You look at the statistics, it's an overwhelming majority of people cannot stand what is happening. But the small, very vocal minority are the ones hogging up all the oxygen. So the only way to combat that is to hog up some oxygen. And I think we can do it in a fun way, in a joyful way. Like if you are into music, my son plays the trumpet, so he's always filling up, and even just like doing nice things to show that we really do see the humanity in each other, which is all this is about. This is about us refusing to let our humanity get erased. And censorship is, in my opinion, a way to erase humanity. It's basically saying certain people do not deserve to have space. And that is very anti-human. So I think that if you like humans, that you should not try to censor other humans because it is about all our mutual right to exist. So there's so many ways we can just use our social media, or you don't have to use your social media. You can just go up to a librarian and tell them that you care, right? So that we're forming community and we're not doing this by ourselves, wondering if we're all alone, because we're not. We're actually with the majority.
Thank you. So, Jarrett, I have a question for you since we've heard a lot about ways to support authors, and of course, working with a lot of librarians. And I'd love to hear from you. What are some ways that librarians, because I think we have probably a lot in our audience of library workers who are really interested in supporting authors and illustrators. If you have any thoughts of ways that library workers can work with authors and illustrators, again, in this fight against censorship and to support authors and illustrators?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. And I was just thinking about the fact there are so many librarians in the audience, and I wanted to just tack on to the end of the advocacy question is this is something I've had to struggle with a lot. Why am I not out marching? Why am I not doing that? Why am I not doing enough? And then looking at what I do for a living and realizing that upholding the values of libraries and preserving a safe space for all people to coexist peacefully and explore and learn and do so many things that libraries offer. That's hard work, and that is essential work to democracy. It's essential work to freedom. It's essential work to making sure anti-human sentiment and hate, as Kelly referenced, do not take hold, because I think when we can coexist and explore different stories and different identities and experiences through the books and materials and the people we meet in libraries, that's essential work. It can't be overstated. And so if you're exhausted, if you're completely fatigued, because what libraries are up against, budget-wise, and attacks from the public and attacks from boards, and internally from directors, you are doing incredible work, and you do not beat yourself up for not doing enough, because that's capitalist bullshit that says you're not productive enough until you're dead. You're doing a lot. So but to your question, I think that so one thing that as a librarian that I always do is when it comes to displays and things that I want to promote within the space, I'm always looking to platform the authors who are not the famous ones, and the banned books that are not the ones that everybody's heard of. I sort of make that my mission. Like, I've read the first Lightning Thief. I get it. I enjoyed it. I would love to have the time to read the rest of them. But what's important to me is that I find, whoever that year or whatever, or whenever, have not gotten a chance to be platformed and are offering something more than and different than the Lightning Thief. So that's one thing that as librarians, I think we can do for authors is just really focus on those books that you just can't put down and that you love, but that got no press, and publishers aren't really behind in their marketing department, and you're not seeing them interviewed, left and right. Those authors absolutely need our support. And I think there's a lot we can do, from word of mouth to videos to bibliographies to displays to blog posts, to include them as much as possible and say their names a lot, and the names of their books and why we love their work so much. I think that's huge. And do it in school visits. I'm a school liaison, so I go to a lot of schools, and I love being able to talk up books that kids haven't heard of. Whereas when I say the two words "dog man," which maybe is one word, they flip out. Yeah, it's great, instant gratification, but they don't need it. The authors and the kids need it to be connected to those stories. So that, and just as much as you can, pay authors and make it clear when you want to bring them in that you're inviting them and you have a budget, because there's nothing worse than being invited in, getting excited about a project, and then, oh, it turns out we can't pay you anything. That's also a little bit, it's not only stressful, but it's also a little bit of a kick in the shins, just as an author, because you don't make a lot as an author, and that's why I work 3 jobs basically. So yeah, I guess that's where I would go.
Thank you. And thanks for bringing that perspective at being both an author and a librarian, and having that insight into ways that these professions can work together, and do this fight that we are on the same side of. But as Ashley and Kelly talked about, that we all have our different spheres and different spheres of influence and our different talents, and how can library workers bring their talents and their insight, and their spheres of influence to this. As a reminder to everyone in the audience, that you can use our Q&A box to ask additional questions. We have had some answered already, and some that have been answered in the conversation, but just as a reminder, that you also have that option as well. One thing that I would love to hear from all of you, that I think a lot of folks are feeling very overwhelmed right now, very worried, and really inundated also with a lot of really negative news, and especially about this topic. What gives you hope right now? What are some of the things that you look to and gives you a feeling of hope in this fight? Ashley, I see you just unmuted yourself, so I
Was
figured there was something
accidental,
hopeful
but
right away.
well, it is my middle name. I think there's something about the openness of harm right now that is very scary, but it also means that a lot of the time you're not one thing I've found that I don't have to do is try to explain to people why they should be concerned. Do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people are concerned. And so the challenge is connecting this moment, not to a sense of despair, but to a sense of um, possibility sounds, I don't know. Let me just put it this way. Having a sense of connection to others who have stood in similar times where the hate and the discrimination and the erasure was happening on the front page like this. I'm thinking of the violent attacks on civil rights workers, murders, those that that there's something shocking to us in this moment to be like, oh, that stuff's here again. But I think that the important thing is not letting that turn into a source of fear, but to have a sense of clarity about the work that we do and finding the ways to hold a stand for people's dignity and belonging. That is not just how we get results. It is how we continue to be the people who carry forward those messages of like what we can be together as a people. And I think that there's, I on my banned books in the cost of censorship class, we're coming up, we have in 2 weeks, but we're coming up on the low point in the semester where we get really, really discouraged. And I always spend a whole, we have a 3-hour seminar, so a whole day with primary documents from Mississippi Freedom Schools. Because if we think back to that moment in the early 1960s and what public education was for Black Americans, censored textbooks, so much oppression. And we can see people showed up and they could not solve the degree of discrimination with pop-up schools and church backyards, but they showed up and they did something that was transformative for young people because it showed them what else was possible, how it could feel to share ideas or write things. And so I think that I try to say, let's be in the trajectory, let's be part of the catalyst. And I'm not optimistic, but if nothing else, that is what I want my kids to see me doing. I want them to see that every chance that presents itself is something that we take to stand for the dignity and belonging of others.
Well, now you've given me another thing to feel hopeful about and inspire. Kelly, I'd like to turn this question to you. What has been inspiring you? What gives you hope in this moment?
What gives me hope? I think just first of all, I do actually believe that kids are way smarter than all of this, that they just see right through it. And that gives me so much hope. I mean, if you talk to a kid, they're really smart and they're so savvy and they know what's up and they know what's good for them and they have questions and they're curious and there's nothing that they are shy about talking about. They want to know things. They want to know about, even just boring stuff like the stock market. They want to know about it. So I feel there's a lot of hope when you spend time with kids, and I try to, as much as it's hard to, have the time to spend all the time because we're writing so much, we don't really get to be around people. But whenever I'm out there and I'm around people, it fills me up. It gives me hope. There's so many people who want this world to be better than the world that they were born into, right? They want to leave it better. And that gives me a lot of hope. And also just, I think that human beings we're really good at survival and we're really rebellious. So I don't think any censorship attempt is actually going to work in the long run because we're so rebellious. And I've seen that happen in history over and over and over again. So, I mean, just the sheer fact that it's very hard to try to, it's actually really hard to try to completely squash something. And if you have something to say, please say it, please write it, please don't be scared. That would be my biggest hope. My hope is that all of this nonsense doesn't scare away the next generation of amazing writers and artists.
I hope for that too. because there are so many I know that are waiting there in the wings. Um, Jarrett, what about you? What are some things that give you hope in this moment?
For me, being together with people, I know that's a theme that we've all touched on, but there's nothing more powerful for me. And I think even, I have a lot of friends who are introverts and they say, I resist wanting to go out and go to a gathering or something. But a lot of times, as long as I'm not like burned out by it, I'm thankful that I went. I think it is a fundamental feature of humans is to gather and to be together. And so for me, the thing that really gives me hope in my personal life is music, playing music and attending live concerts with people. It's life-saving to me. And then my job too. I can have the most ghastly morning having read the news or woken up from nightmares and then come to work and have a school visit and I feel renewed. And I think that's the power of the excitement and also points of view of young people and just how refreshing they can be. And to that point, and Ashley touched on this too, as well as Kelly, modeling for others is such an important responsibility, I think, for us as adults. In particular, I was very inspired by one of the teens who I interviewed at length, who was one of the sort of central organizers of the protest to save Persepolis. She told me that because I asked her what was it that drove you to sort of throw everything aside that week and make this your purpose, and she said, I mean, this is she was a 17-year-old. So imagine this, she's a 17 senior in high school. And she said, it was the fact that I thought there would be 7th and 8th graders watching and see us do nothing. And so the fact that she has that sense of responsibility towards the middle schoolers in her midst was a great reminder, I think, of the way teens think, the way that we should listen to them, and that they're a model for us as well. And I think adults tend to forget that. They see things a lot clearer and I think get punished for it. And instead, I'm speaking to the choir here, of course, preaching to the choir because YA authors, but yeah, the voice of teens is just so important. So those of you who are teen librarians out there, like your work to really give them voice and encourage them to have advocacy, but also to own that we are the ones with the political power. I can't stand it when adults say to kids, well, when you're older, it's really going to be on your generation to solve that. To me, that's the most disempowering message ever, because it says, hey, we're not going to take care of you, because kids know we're the ones ultimately with the political power, and B, like, we're not going to do anything. So do things, be a model, and keep showing up. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I get inspired by is being around the people. And lastly, to Ashley's point about history, Lisa Klein Ransom has written some phenomenal picture books about the struggle and the danger of learning to read by enslaved people and the risks they took. There are 2 or 3 books that she's written, and I highly recommend all of them. I get very inspired by those stories, and I read them often because it does remind me that this desire for truth and self-education and a love of learning, it's what's the word? Inextinguishable. And so they can try to burn things all they want, but like, we're going to keep showing up and raising voices. And like Kelly said, ultimately, as long as we're alive, we're going to keep the books and the stories alive, and we have to.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. I will say that your work gives me incredible hope, and watching storytellers like you use your talent, use your platform, your skills, your audience, all of that to help people open these conversations, tools to use to shed light on this issue, and just to shed light on stories and voices that they might not otherwise hear. So thank you all so much for your work. It gives me tremendous hope, as I know it does our audience. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to my colleague, Heather.
Thank you so much. these conversations about book banning and during, Banned Books Week can feel very heavy, but like Ashley said in the chat, I am also feeling inspired. I feel a lightness inspired by the wonderful perspectives that you all shared and the tremendous work that you're doing and that we can all do together. So thank you so much, Ashley, Jarrett, and Kelly, for sharing your experiences and your expertise. Thank you so much, Amelia, for moderating this powerful discussion, phenomenal questions, and thank you so much for these wonderful detailed answers. You're all doing such amazing work to defend the right to read, and we are so appreciative.
It was such a
As a
treat.
reminder,
Thank you.
yes, thank you all so much. As a reminder, all 3 of today's sessions from the workshop were recorded, and every recording is going to be sent out to all registrants tomorrow. So if you missed any of the sessions, if you had to step away, or you'd like to revisit one or share one with a colleague, you'll be able to do so. In addition to today's resources, which will also be sent to everybody tomorrow, along with links and questions that weren't, if there were any questions that didn't get answered, we'll send those along to the panelists. We will encourage you to visit ala.org/bbooks for banned books for censorship data, free downloads, and other educational resources to help raise awareness around banned books. And that's a wrap. What a wonderful afternoon. We'd like to thank our wonderful panelists again for their time and for their expertise and energy and inspiration. We couldn't have done it without them. And to our sponsor, Penguin Random House Library Marketing, for their generous support. Thank you for joining us today, everybody. And we hope that you have an impactful Banned Books Week, Freedom to Read Week, and enjoy sharing these wonderful resources with everybody in your community. So thank you all so much.